If you're in the process of buying a home, or maybe you're thinking of buying a home in New York City, but you don't want to hire a real estate agent, or you're not sure whether you should hire a real estate agent or do this yourself, well, this video is for you. What is up, everyone? My name is Sargis. I'm a licensed real estate agent based here in New York City, and this channel is all about New York City real estate when it comes to buying, selling, and renting. I want to let you know right off the bat that this video is not going to be how awesome of a real estate agent I am. Even though that is 100% true, that's not what we're going to talk about today. Instead, I want to approach this question from a different angle. We'll talk about how exactly the process works when you're buying a home in New York City and what your experience will look like if you're trying to do this yourself versus working with a real estate agent. At the end of this video, you'll make your own decision whether it makes sense to do this yourself or work with an agent. Throughout the video, I'm also going to talk about some common misconceptions that people have when going into this process without a professional guidance. So it's very important to watch this video till the end. First, let's answer the question, do you have to use a real estate agent? And the answer is no, you don't have to. You can be on your own without having an agent representing you, or you have a right to be represented by a professional real estate agent. The choice is yours. The second question, do you pay your agent? And the answer is almost always no. There is a thing called co-broke, which means the listing agent, whoever represents the seller and is marketing the apartment, splits the commission paid by the seller at the closing with the buyer's agent who represents you. Of course, following all the local MLS and association rules. There are some very specific cases when this structure might be different, but it's not going to apply more than 99% of people watching this and looking to buy in New York City. So in general, there is no out-of-pocket cost for you as a buyer to work with an agent. You're basically getting a free service. Third, throughout the video, when I compare the situations where you are on your own versus with an agent, we are going to assume that you're working with a competent, professional, and experienced agent. Trying to buy a home with an agent who is not competent, doesn't have the required skills and knowledge, can cost you even more time and money, and you will experience significant delays and frustrations if you don't have a proper guidance. And finally, fourth, we're now going to talk about how to choose a real estate agent to work with in this video, because that is a whole another video which is currently in a process of being filmed. Depending on when you're watching this, check the description of this video. I'll put the link of the video how to hire a real estate agent in New York City in the description of this video when it's ready. So if you're interested in this type of content where I share all my knowledge and experience with you, which hopefully helps you to achieve your goal of being a homeowner, do me a huge favor and like the video and subscribe to the channel. I know this is what everyone asks you to do on YouTube, and you're probably tired of being asked all the time to like and subscribe. But as far as I know, this is how YouTube determines whether or not the video is good enough to recommend it to others. Also comments, so feel free to comment below if you have any questions. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Now let's get to the video. To be able to make a wise decision, whether it's hiring an agent or doing this yourself, first, we need to understand what exactly the buyer's agents do for their clients. It's not just going to an open house with you and getting paid. Agents are doing way more than this. In short, if you're a buyer, the goal of the buyer's agent is to represent your best interest in a transaction. The overall concept is simple. Buyers want to buy the right home at the best price with the best terms. Sellers want to sell their home for the best price with the best terms. Now let's look at how the transaction goes. I already made a video explaining step-by-step buying process, which is linked in the description below, so make sure to watch that as well to understand the full buying process. Whether you work with an agent or without an agent, the steps are the same. What changes is your experience and the outcome. Because I already made videos explaining different parts of the transaction, I'll just mention those videos as we move on so you can watch them if you're interested to know any specific step in details. And I can tell you right now that New York City real estate is one of the most complicated, if not the most complicated, in the entire country. But I'll do my best to explain things as simple as possible. So your home buying journey starts with step one, which is gather your team. One of the most underrated benefits when working with an agent is the fact that you're able to use your agent's connections and network of other professionals who will be involved in your buying journey. The whole process is not just you and the seller. In New York City, buyers and sellers are almost always represented by an attorney. So you'll need an attorney. If you're financing, you'll need a loan officer or mortgage broker. You also might need other third-party experts such as a home inspector, title company, insurance agent, tax advisor, contractor, architect, designer, and so on. Sure, it might not be necessary for all of them to be involved because it depends on the complexity of your transaction and the type of property you're buying. But the point is, the average person buys 2 or 3 homes in their lifetime. And if you're watching this video, I'm assuming your job is not buying and selling homes. You'll probably do something else not related to real estate, and the chances are slim that you'll have all those professionals in your social circle and be able to go to them whenever you need them. But a pro agent whose job is to help people buy and sell homes most likely will have connections. And most importantly, those connections are going to be people and businesses who they worked with in the past and trust. So you don't have to spend your time searching the businesses and professionals, calling them, reading reviews about them, and making sure they are the right people to work with. Just using your agent's connections will make your life a lot easier. Now you might have an argument saying, but why a real estate agent knows them all? What if you know a contractor or a loan officer who can connect you with all those professionals when you need them? And you're right, it can work perfectly fine. But the other most important thing to understand here is the fact that your agent is with you during the whole buying journey. So from step 1 all the way to step 10, when you close on your property, your real estate agent is with you. They're involved in every step of the process and pretty much deal with every professional I mentioned before. And even after closing, for certain issues you might need the help of your agent. Everyone else no doubt plays an important role, but they are stepping in only to provide their expertise in their portion of the transaction. But the real estate agent is the one who manages the transaction from the beginning until the end. And also, just knowing everyone else in this list is not enough. You also need to know which professional you need during which step of the process. So to summarize here, when you are in step 1 gathering your team, your agent, since the agents are involved in the process from start till the end, should know, depending on your situation, which professionals you need and when. And since most of the time real estate agents have relationships with those professionals and worked with them before, using their connections and network can save you a lot of time and eliminate the uncertainty, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. Now if you still think that you don't need an agent, that's great, let's keep it moving. Assuming you know everyone you need, or you've spent many hours and days trying to find every professional that you'll need for your home buying journey, now you're in step 2, which is determine your budget and needs. What makes New York City real estate so difficult and complicated is the fact that we have many co-ops here and every co-op has its own rules and requirements. When you are in a process of determining your budget, just by deciding how much money you want to put down and figuring out your monthly mortgage payments is not enough. If you're in a different market where you're buying a house, or if you're buying a townhouse in New York City, you'll have more freedom to determine your budget. You can decide how much down payment you're ready to put and what kind of monthly payments you'll be comfortable with. And if the bank is able to qualify you for a certain mortgage product, you should be good to go. But first of all, be careful when budgeting. Besides your mortgage payments, you also need to budget for your closing costs, property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and repairs. If you're buying a condo in New York City, some condos might have a minimum down payment requirement, which if they do, most of the time is 10%. But if you're buying a co-op, they have way more restrictions and requirements. Every building is different, and just because you think you can afford certain price point apartment and you'll be comfortable with your mortgage payments is not enough. Co-ops can control not only what your minimum down payment should be, but also what your DTI, your post-closing liquidity should be. Also, whether or not you're allowed to have a co-purchaser with you, whether or not any part of your down payment or closing costs can be gifted money, and so on. I'm not going to talk about the details of co-op requirements in this video since I already made a separate video about it, which is this one. So check the description below and watch it as well. It's very important to know. At this stage of the process, your agent should be able to help you to figure out what type of apartment you need, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, location, what type of amenities are absolutely necessary for you to have, what are your must-have features and deal breakers. You should also be aware of all other costs that will occur during your home buying process. You need to have realistic expectations on what kind of apartment you can be qualified for and what you can afford. Watch this video if you want to know how much money you need to buy an apartment in New York City and how much closing costs you need to budget for. This is also a very important video. At this time, you're also getting pre-approved, which means once you know what exactly you want to buy, you're going to speak to a loan officer or mortgage broker. They'll check your finances to make sure you are qualified to take a certain amount of mortgage and issue you a pre-approval letter. You need this to be able to make an offer when you find a home you like. So assuming you still don't want an agent, you know everything you need, you already determined your budget, you know exactly what type of home you can afford, you are aware of all the closing costs and hidden fees that you should be careful of, we are moving to the next step, which is home search. Typically, if you're not working with an agent, a lot of people will just go to any home search websites or apps, plug in their search criteria such as number of bedrooms, bathrooms, location, etc. and start browsing. Whichever apartment they like, they'll just reach out to the listing agent, schedule an appointment, and go see it. Now, if you're just casually looking, or maybe you have some plans to buy in the future, that's fine to just browse and look. But if you're seriously buying, you have to make sure that you are doing your apartment search properly. One of the important things to keep in mind is, in order to find the best possible home, you need to see every possible option. If you're searching in websites like Zillow, Trulia, realtor.com, StreetEasy, where you have those search boxes, sure, you can plug in your search criteria such as the location, max budget, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and so on. The problem with that is, let's say you're looking to spend $1.8 million and buy a 2-bedroom apartment in Upper East Side. If you put $1.8 million here, you won't see anything above your max budget. So how do you know that all the apartments that are priced at or below $1.8 million is what they actually worth? What if some apartments that are priced over $1.8 million, it can be 1.9 or even 2 million or above, are overpriced and you're able to negotiate them down? So be careful when filtering by your exact search criteria, because you might not see some homes that otherwise could have been a great choice for you. Second, besides looking at the apartment itself, you also have to carefully consider the building. Even if you're looking to buy in a condominium building only, some condos might also have a minimum down payment requirement, certain rules regarding pets, installation of in-unit washer and dryer, and so on. Most of the time with condos, you are free to rent out your apartment anytime, but I've seen condos that have some restrictions on this too. For example, you're allowed to rent out your apartment only after 1 year of ownership. Most of the time, they also have a minimum or maximum lease terms and things like that. With co-ops, it's even more complicated because they have more rules and restrictions. Don't forget to watch this. Everything you need to know is here. And if you're going to stay away from co-ops just because the buying process is complicated or co-ops are generally known for being strict, this can be a huge mistake, because again, you might miss out on a lot of homes that otherwise could have been a great choice. Co-ops might have some serious advantages. So the bottom line is, just because co-ops can be complicated doesn't automatically mean that it's better to buy a condo. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. It all depends on your specific situation. And if you're asking, but what are the advantages of buying a co-op? Well, here's a video on that topic. Pros and cons of a co-op apartment. The link is up here and in the description below. If you're working with a pro agent, once they understand what exactly you're looking to buy in your search criteria, they should be able to filter the buildings as well, so you don't waste your time looking and falling in love with a beautiful apartment only later to find out that because of a certain rule or requirement, this building will not work for you. But even if you're able to filter the buildings, find and have a list of apartments that will work for you, in terms of efficiency, I can tell you right now that unless you're doing this full-time all day every day, it's very hard to schedule multiple appointments back to back, creating the most efficient route. It requires a lot of back and forth communication with every listing agent to schedule a tour. You probably have a full-time job, you're busy. Why not let a professional agent schedule a tour for you, where all you need to do is to be available at a certain day and time and see as many apartments as possible. And sure, even for agents, it's not always possible to schedule an ideal tour. Sometimes there are wait times between appointments, sometimes there are cancellations, but a pro agent will have a system in place. Their communication with listing agents will be much faster. They'll know where to search, how to search apartments, then narrow down the search results, schedule tours, be with you, ask the right questions, and look out for things that you might not see. After that, they should be able to help you analyze every apartment you saw in order for the process to move forward. Also, at this stage, it's very important to not only find the right property, but also be as efficient as possible and submit your offer on time in order not to lose the property. If you're in a seller's market and competing with multiple offers, just like we've had in 2021, you'll need to be very quick with your decision and move forward fast. If you're in a buyer's market just like we are in one now, you might have a little bit more time and more negotiating power. But the point is that your agent, and don't forget we're talking about a pro agent, will make your buying journey less stressful and more efficient. Moving forward, let's say you still are not going to work with an agent. You're able to find all the apartments that might work for you, figure out the right buildings, narrow down the search results, schedule appointments. You found the right apartment and now we're on step 4. It's time to make an offer. The question now is, how do you know what price to offer? The listing price is not an indication of what the apartment is actually worth at the time of your purchase. It largely depends on the market. Are you in a buyer's market where you have more negotiating power, or are you in a seller's market where you're competing with multiple offers and your offer needs to be as strong as possible in order for you to get the home? There can be situations when it's overpriced, so you'll need to negotiate the price down, and there can be situations when it's underpriced. This can happen if, let's say, the seller needs to sell it quickly, or maybe they just didn't properly price the apartment. And if that's the case, you also need to be able to recognize the good deal in front of you. Offering over asking price doesn't automatically mean that you're overpaying. If you don't have a professional guidance and you're in a competitive market, the chances are high that someone else might submit a better offer. And when I say better offer, I don't necessarily mean just the price. A lot of times people just think that the price is the only thing that the sellers are concerned about, but it's not. Other factors besides the price that make your offer more or less strong are terms, timeline, inclusions and exclusions, and contingencies. Let's break down what those actually mean. Terms are basically what your down payment is, what percentage you're financing, and which closing costs are paid by who. There might be building flip taxes or assessments that also need to be negotiated. By the way, this is the video about assessments. If you don't know what an assessment is, it's very important to watch it. Also, depending on the market, are you able to negotiate any seller concessions or any credits? So there are a lot of things that go into this. Timeline is also very important because your offer can stand out if you're able to give the seller the timeline they need, or depending on the market, negotiate the timeline that you need. For example, if it's winter and you would like to close in summer, depending on the market and how you negotiate, you might be able to have the seller agree to your timeline. Or if you're competing with multiple offers, giving the timeline that the seller prefers. For example, if it's winter now and the seller would like to sign a contract but close in late spring, your offer will stand out if you're able to give the seller their preferred timeline. In order to do so, first, you need to know how to find out the important key decision-making factors for the seller. Next, inclusions and exclusions, which is pretty much self-explanatory. What is included with the sale and what is not included. Again, depending on the market and how well you negotiate, you might be able to either get something else that will make your deal even better, or when competing with multiple offers, with inclusions and exclusions exactly the way the seller wants, can increase the chances of them going with your offer. For example, if let's say they have a built-in wall unit and they just don't want to deal with the headache of removing it, your offer can be better if you're okay just keeping it and removing it yourself later. Or if you have more negotiating power, you might be able to give them the price they'll take, but in return get more value by them including a nice custom-made furniture that is in a great condition. In this example, you just saved more money by not having to buy a new furniture. Those were just examples, and every situation can be different depending on your specific case, but you get the idea. And the last one would be contingencies. This is also very, very important. It's basically your safety, your exit from the contract without any penalties if the terms of a certain clause aren't met. If the buyer is financing, almost always there is a mortgage contingency, meaning if you're not able to get financing from your lender within a specific period, you are free to walk away from the deal. If you're buying a co-op, you should always have a board approval contingency. With condos, right of first refusal contingency. Depending on the transaction, there can be an inspection contingency, appraisal contingency, sale contingency, meaning if you're not able to sell your existing home within a specific period, you are free to walk away from the deal. Generally speaking, the more contingencies you put in your offer, the less desirable it becomes for the seller. Depending on the transaction, some contingencies are very important to have and some are okay to waive. Again, this depends on your specific situation, what type of market you're in, and how many other offers you're competing with. If you're working with a professional real estate agent, they'll be able to provide all the data of recent comparable sales in your market, which will help you decide your offering price. They'll also help you understand the other important aspects of your offer that we just talked about. They'll make sure your offer is strong enough and at the same time contains all the appropriate contingencies for you to be safe. When you make an offer, if you're financing, typically you'll need to provide your pre-approval letter, your bank statement showing the proof of funds for down payment and closing costs, and if you're buying a co-op, it's very important to submit your personal financial statements, which shows your DTI and post-closing liquidity. This will make the seller comfortable knowing that you are a qualified buyer. If you don't know what those financial statements are, you can see it in my co-op board package video. You'll need to submit those with your board package anyways, so having it ready shows that you are a qualified and real buyer ready to complete your purchase. Another thing that I think helps a lot is a letter where you talk a little bit about yourself, your occupation, your hobbies, and what do you like about this building and the apartment. This helps to make a good connection with the seller and might help with negotiations. Be very careful when you are in a step of making an offer. This is the step where you are running into a risk of either unknowingly overpaying for an apartment or losing the deal because you didn't make an offer that is strong enough. In this step, the knowledge and expertise of your agent should help you to get the right deal. I am not saying that you are 100% guaranteed to get the right deal with any agent. I'm just saying that when it's time to make an offer, there are a lot of things that you might not see or know about. And the chances of you buying a wrong place or paying the wrong price or losing the home is a lot higher if you don't have a professional guidance. Another thing that is a common misconception is when people think if they go to a listing agent directly without having an agent to represent them, they'll automatically get a better price because now the seller doesn't have to pay the buyer's broker, which is simply not how it works. As I mentioned before, when the seller hires a broker to sell their home, the commission that is paid by the seller is already predetermined. In most cases, the listing agent has an exclusive agreement with the seller, according to which the seller agrees to pay a certain percentage as a commission for the sale of their home, usually 5 or 6% or whatever percentage they negotiate. If the buyer is represented by an agent, the listing agent will co-broke the commission with the buyer's agent according to whatever the local MLS or association rules are. If the buyer is not represented, the commission is still the same, only now the listing agent has no one to co-broke with and keeps it all. If the listing agent and the seller have a separate agreement for a different percentage if the buyer is unrepresented, that simply has nothing to do with you getting a different price. If you're trying to negotiate with the listing agent to give up part of their commission because you're unrepresented, well, first of all, they don't have to do that. Second, if they agree to do that, let's say give out 1 or 2% of their commission to get the deal done, well, the question is, how do you know the listing price is what the apartment is worth to begin with? It might feel like you got 1 or 2% off, but how do you know it was priced properly and you would have not gotten 4, 5, or 6% off or even more with having an agent on your side and negotiating on your behalf? These are very important things to keep in mind. The situation can be a little bit different if you're going to a listing which is for sale by owner. But if you're trying to buy a home and you only consider the listings that are for sale by owner, I don't know about other markets, but in New York City you are going to have extremely limited options. And that's not the best way to find the right home. Probably one of the worst ways. If you work with an experienced agent and the home you like just happens to be for sale by owner, your agent should know how to handle the negotiations and commission situation. When you're just starting your home buying journey with an agent, you can always ask them how they will handle the situation if the apartment you like happens to be for sale by owner and let them clarify that. Now, if you still think a buyer's agent is not necessary for you, assuming you looked at all the comps, you're a great negotiator, you were able to submit a strong offer on your own, your offer got accepted, what do you do now? Step 5 is signing the contract. As soon as you have an accepted offer, it's time to let your attorney know. As I mentioned before, most of the time it is common that in New York City, buyers and sellers are represented by a real estate attorney. Here, after the contract is fully negotiated and finalized, when you sign the contract and wire the deposit, the seller's attorney will send the contract to the seller for countersignature. And as soon as the seller's attorney delivers the fully signed and executed contract, congratulations, you are officially in contract, which is binding. That's why it is very important to work with an experienced attorney who will negotiate the contract to make sure you are protected and all the appropriate contingencies are in place. Besides negotiating the contract, the buyer's attorney also does a due diligence on the building, which means they'll review the building's offering plan, financials, bylaws, the board's meeting minutes. If you're buying a co-op, they'll also review your proprietary lease. They might submit a questionnaire to the managing agent if they need any additional information. Basically, your attorney will make sure there are no red flags with the building is run properly, and no issues with that individual apartment in the board's meeting minutes. They will also order a title search if you're buying a condo or a townhouse, or a lien search if you're buying a co-op. While your attorney is doing a due diligence, you have a chance to do an inspection. If you're buying a house, the inspection is very important. With condos and co-ops, it's a little bit different. Again, we're not going to talk more details about the inspection because I already made a video about this, which is this one. You can watch it to know all the details of condo and co-op inspection. Your agent should be able to help you to understand the situation and will guide you with your inspection process if it's necessary. Depending on the type of property you're buying, you might not need an inspection. But there might be a second round of negotiations if your inspector found some issues during the inspection. It's very important that the negotiations regarding the inspection issues are properly handled. So the contract is fully negotiated and finalized, you sign it, wire the deposit, and the seller's attorney delivers the fully signed and executed contract. Congratulations! Now we're moving to step 6, which is your mortgage application step if you're financing. And if you're buying a condo or a co-op, you're also going to work on step 7, which is your board package. Now, as soon as you have a signed contract, you will need to finalize your mortgage application. This is, of course, if you're financing. Your goal here is to get what's called a loan commitment letter. This is the time when the bank will order an appraisal. Since the bank is going to hold your property as a collateral, they need to make sure that the home is worth the money you're offering to buy. While your mortgage broker or loan officer is finalizing your mortgage, you also need to start preparing your board package. Again, this is only if you're buying a condo or a co-op apartment. I won't go into the details of a board package.
But why?
Because I already have 2 separate videos, one for condo board package and one for co-op board package. For this video, just know that it's very important to put together your board package correctly. Doing this incorrectly or submitting the package with missing documents can result in significant delays, frustrations, and even rejection if you're buying a co-op. If you're working with an agent, your agent should be able to carefully review your board package paperwork, help you fill out and submit all the necessary documents. And I can tell you right now that if you don't have an agent, it's not only going to be time consuming, but an extremely challenging task for you, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. The question you might have now is, well, what's wrong with asking the listing agent to help you with the board package? You certainly can, but first of all, you don't know that agent. You don't have any relationship with them, and you don't know their level of competence, knowledge, and expertise. In other words, that's not the agent you chose to work with. They just happen to be the agent who listed the apartment for sale. Sure, you might get a great experience, they might be very knowledgeable and give you all the help you need, but basically with one of your biggest purchases, if not the biggest one, you're just relying on a hope that the listing agent will give you all the help you need. The situations can be different. They might be an agent who exclusively works with sellers and they're just not a great help to you as a buyer. They might just be an agent who happens to have a license and just listed their uncle's apartment. You get the idea. Okay, so let's assume the listing agent is able to help you and put together your board package properly. The other issue with that is you're sharing all you have, including all your finances, with an agent who just doesn't represent you in the transaction. And be very careful, there might be situations when if there was a contingency and now you're in a position of either renegotiating, or basically walking away from the deal, that agent already knows everything about your situation and your finances. So good luck with not having an agent on your side to properly handle the unexpected situations. Sure, there is a thing called a dual agency where the agent represents both parties and has a fiduciary responsibility to both the buyer and the seller. But the problem with that is, even though in theory it can be done, practically speaking, it's very hard for an agent to properly represent the best interest of the seller and at the same time represent the best interest of the buyer. And sellers also have to agree to that, not just you and the agent. A lot of sellers simply might not agree to a dual agency. The seller is the one who pays the commission. Why would they let their agent to also represent the buyer and have a fiduciary responsibility to them as well? Be very careful with this because there is a big potential of having a conflict of interest. As an agent, I try to stay away from representing both parties in the same transaction. There might be very specific cases when this works properly, but if you want to know my opinion, 99% of the time, I wouldn't recommend a dual agency. So assuming you got your commitment letter, you are able to figure out the board package yourself, you did everything correctly, your board package is submitted, what's next? Now the next steps are a little bit different depending on what type of property you're buying. If you're buying a co-op, after the board reviews your purchase application, 3 things can happen. First, they might reject your application, which means you can't complete your purchase and you have to start your buying journey all over again. This is one of the worst things that can happen and you don't want to experience a board rejection. The other thing that can happen, if they see some inconsistencies or if they have additional questions, they might come back to you and ask for more supporting documents to verify whatever they saw or had questions about, which will delay the process, but your application is still being reviewed. And the third option, they'll invite you for an interview, which means everything was good with your board package, they like what they saw on the paper, and now they just want to see you and make sure you are who you claim to be in your purchase application. Different buildings conduct interviews differently. You might meet with multiple members of the board or with just one person. There are buildings that make this more like a formal interview, and there are buildings that the interview will feel like more of an orientation. They'll just tell you about the building, how things work, and ask you if you have any questions. It's very important that you know how exactly to present yourself during the interview, what to say and what not to say. An experienced agent should be able to prepare you for your board interview. Okay, so let's say you did this all by yourself, you passed the interview and got an approval from the board. Congratulations, you are almost done. Once you have your board approval, the attorneys will start preparing for the closing. Because there are multiple parties involved, it usually takes at least 1 to 2 weeks to schedule the closing. So once the closing date is scheduled, there is one more important step, which is your final walkthrough. Typically a day before your closing or the same morning, you'll inspect the property to make sure nothing has changed. There has been no damage, no fire, no leak since you signed the contract. All appliances are in working order, and if there was any work that the seller was required to do according to the contract, is done before the closing. If you're working with an agent, your agent most of the time will accompany you to make sure you're not missing anything. If everything looks good, the last step is closing. Congratulations, you are a homeowner. Now this was if you're buying a co-op. If you're buying a condo after you submit the board package, the main difference is that a condo board cannot just reject your application. With condos, they have what's called a right of first refusal, which means that a condo board has the right to buy the apartment first with the same price and terms as agreed by the buyer and seller. So if a condo board for some reason doesn't want that specific resale to happen, they have to buy the apartment themselves, which in reality almost never happens. But co-op boards can reject the application without having to do anything in return. When you submit your condo board package, you are waiting for the board to either exercise its right of first refusal or waive it. When they waive it, that means they're not buying the apartment and you have a green light to proceed to the closing table. But there is a big but. Even though condo boards cannot just reject your application, it does not mean that you can submit an incorrect or incomplete board package. In order for them to issue you a waiver, your package needs to be complete and correct. Some condos can have a simple board package with just a few forms to fill out and sign, and other condos can require as much information as a typical co-op would want to see. So the bottom line is, whether it's a condo or a co-op, your board package needs to be complete and correct. After the board reviews your board package and you have the waiver, usually there is no interview required for a condo, so the rest of the process is the same. The attorney schedules the closing, you do the final walkthrough, and hopefully the closing goes smoothly. Congratulations, you are a homeowner. And if you're buying a townhouse, single family, or multifamily building, once you have the commitment letter from your lender, the attorneys can prepare for closing. Here, there is no board package or interview. My goal with this video was to show you what a real estate agent actually does for a buyer. As you saw, it's not just coming to an open house with you and getting paid. Besides the actual search process and negotiations, there are a lot of paperwork and time-consuming tasks that also need to be handled in order to successfully complete the purchase. And this is a video if you want to know how long it actually takes to buy a home in New York City, so you can properly plan your timeline. Hopefully this video was helpful for you to make an informed decision whether you still think it's better to be on your own or have a professional buyer's agent to help you with this process for free. With that said, one more important thing to keep in mind is not every agent is competent and has enough knowledge and experience to make your home buying journey as smooth as possible. Working with the wrong agent can be worse than trying to do this on your own. So be very careful who you work with. Knowing how to hire an agent is a whole another video that should be ready soon. So definitely subscribe to the channel, and if you stayed with me all the way till the end, liking the video would be a huge favor. I'm also doing weekly consultation calls, so if you are already in a process, or maybe you're thinking of buying, selling, or renting in New York City, or if you just have questions regarding New York City real estate, there is a link in the description of this video where you can schedule your free 30-minute consultation call with me. Thank you for watching. Until next time.